Hello everyone, welcome back. If this is your first time here, my name is Teresa. I'm a surface pattern designer and watercolor artist. So if you clicked on this thumbnail, it's because you want to know a little more about what to do with ugly sketchbook pages. But before we get to that, let's just talk a little bit about sketchbooks in general. If you're new to watercolors, you've likely heard artists talk about how important it is to keep a sketchbook journal. Well, I agree with that, but don't feel the pressure to run out and buy a moleskin journal if that's not what you want to do, okay? This is your art journey. If you feel more comfortable keeping your artwork in just a watercolor pad or any loose leaf watercolor paper, whatever you want to do, that's what you need to do, okay? The beauty of a specific journal is that it keeps it all in a time sequence. So like this is my very first one. I can now go back and say this was my first few months with watercolor, and I can actually see my progression as you go through my books. That's very useful. I love having these. It's compact. It's a nice way of keeping them all together. But if that's not your thing, that's okay. I felt pressured in the beginning to keep a journal, and then I would get very, very stressed out when I would have an ugly page. Because let's face it, on YouTube, on Instagram, any other social media where you have artists who are sharing their sketchbooks, every page looks perfect. And that's intimidating, especially when you're first starting out. So the first thing I want you to understand, and I know you already know this, but it's helpful to hear it sometimes. Everyone has ugly pages. Whether you think they do or not, they really do. Even very, very experienced artists will have an ugly page here and there. So how do we deal with a bad page? Well, you can just leave it. It doesn't matter, right? Your book is your book. That's for your creative process. But especially in the beginning, I had a lot of bad pages. And like this book, this is my second book. And there were pages in here that physically hurt me to look at, to be quite honest. You know, I would get frustrated, I would just scribble over the top of it, and every time I looked at it, it just made me feel uncomfortable. So I decided I would just tear them out. I didn't want to see them, so I tore them out. Well, you know what? It just tears up your book. That's all it does. This book was probably twice as thick as it is now, and it's barely hanging on now. So that's really not a good option. So that was the only book I did that in. Then, a little later on, I discovered another way that I could make myself feel better about my book, because I don't want to be afraid of my sketchbook, right? It's a tool, and I was afraid to use it because I would mess it up. That doesn't make sense, does it? So I started taking things that I do like and pasting them on top of the pages that I don't like. And I really love this spread now. I tore the paper out from around whatever I had painted and glued it on here. So I really loved the way that looked, and it made me feel so much better, so much more creative and free with my book, that I just started doing that as a practice. So now I have sketchbooks that are quite fluffy that I really, really love. And it really made me feel more comfortable and open to exploring, experimenting in my sketchbook. Now this one, I have really glued a lot in here. And you know, some of it was just for the fun of doing it, not necessarily to cover up an ugly page. But like I said, I am much more free, and I use my sketchbook all the time now. So just to give you a few examples of what I'm talking about, like this spread, I really loved this spread, but I did not like this side. And so I took the popsicle that I did for one of my reels and cut it a little bit and just glued it in here. Now it's a much more pleasing spread, and I'm keeping that popsicle in a place where I can find it easily. Let's see some of my other ones. This same thing, I loved this spread. This is where I was working out an idea for another video, and I did not like this side, so I just covered it up with something else. You know, of course I don't paint everything in my sketchbook. This is just where I work out my ideas. And let's see, here we go again, same thing. Sometimes I will tape in pages just to keep my ideas all together. This is one of my favorite spreads that I completely messed up the whole spread, and so I just glued in these little pieces. And you see this is a whole separate paper that I've taped in. And so this is a fun little spread that I really want to do something else with at some point. Again, this actually ended up being a greeting card, and I didn't like the facing page, so I covered it up. And you've probably seen this page. Lots of glue and tape in here, but now I'm much more connected to my sketchbook. It's a useful tool for me, and I'm much more free and much more creative with it. Let's see, you probably know that one. And oh, this one actually became fabric, but this is where I worked it out. So that became that fabric. Anyway, that's just how I use my sketchbook now that I'm more comfortable with it. So I would just offer that to you as a solution if you are feeling uncomfortable with some of your ugly pages. Now, that did not cure my desire to have a perfectly neat, pristine book. So I decided I'll have a special book. I purchased a journal that had a prettier cover, had a little bit nicer paper, is spiral bound so that it's easy to flip through. And whenever I paint something, whether it's in my journal or not, that I really love, I'll practice it several times and really just work out the composition, the colors, and all of that. But then I will paint it again in this special book. So I have a catalog or a journal of things that I'm proud of that I can share if I want to share without the fear of there being any ugly pages in it. And now I feel like, okay, so I have a little collection of my nicer things here. And then I'm free to use my sketchbooks for my real creative process. So I hope this has given you something to think about, maybe just a springboard for brainstorming how to deal with your ugly pages if they're bothering you. And if you found this one helpful, please give me a thumbs up and let me know. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing for a lot more watercolor videos coming up soon. By hitting like and subscribe, you're letting YouTube know that this was helpful content for you, and it may be helpful for someone else too. Thanks so much.